Live pictures of the White House now, a critical call between President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin set to take place within the next hour. Over the weekend, the president appearing optimistic.
We learned a lot. We're doing pretty well, I think, with Russia. A lot of work's been done over the weekend. We want to see if we can bring that war to an end. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but I think we have a very good chance.
Not part of this call, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He wants the U.S. to put the pressure on Russia, demanding maximum sanctions if Putin refuses a ceasefire. And he blamed Putin for ignoring the U.S.-led efforts to make a deal.
Every day in wartime means human lives. By now, it has been nearly a week since it became absolutely clear to everyone in the world, even to those who, for the past 3 years, refused to acknowledge the truth, that it is Putin who continues and prolongs this war. For a week now, Putin has been unable to muster a simple yes in response to the ceasefire proposal.
I want to welcome in Andrij Dobriansky, Director of Communications and Media for the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Andrij, I've watched you for the last few years. It seems like every time we talk to you, it's centered on a difficult situation that Volodymyr Zelensky has to make each and every time representing the Ukrainian people. I want to start with asking you this. It seems as though President Trump has noted that land and power plants are part of the talks with Russia. He mentioned efforts to focus on, quote, dividing up certain assets. But Andrij, it seems like the assets we're talking about dividing up are all assets that belong to Ukraine.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? There's been a lot of discussions about carrots and sticks and how Ukraine gets the stick, but Russia gets the carrot. And that seems to be the negotiating status right now. It is also interesting. I might add that the United States law states that it is the express United States policy to help Ukraine return all territories that were invaded by Russian, and as well as that they will never recognize Russian occupation of these territories. So it's not just a discussion that's happening on the back of Air Force One. There needs to be U.S. law changed to even broker this kind of discussion.
So, Andrij, how is this a win situation when we're talking about giving up assets that belongs to Ukraine and then seeing if Vladimir Putin will actually go along with the deal that the U.S. seems to be brokering?
Well, we don't know what's going to be discussed today. We do know that you just covered a ceasefire that was brokered by the White House that doesn't seem to be a ceasefire. And we also know that peace isn't just the absence of war. You heard President Zelensky just now concentrating on the truth, recognizing that there are people who will not recognize the truth that Russia invaded Ukraine. There are many truths that needs to be voiced in the process of peacemaking. So you don't just stop the war. You need to have peacemaking after the fact. Who will be assisting in that? That's not very clear. And who will be voicing the truth of the hundreds and, dare we say, thousands of people who are victims of sexual abuse? Who will be returning the nearly 20,000 children? Will Russia be doing that as a sign of goodwill at the very beginning? These are the problems you have with a terrorist state. We're seeing it in Gaza. We're not seeing the same kind of hard line from the United States against Russia.
And Andrij, before I go any further, let's just break it down for our audience, because we're talking about it's not a ceasefire. Exactly where do things stand right now? What is the situation in Ukraine?
It's pretty hot, but in reality, it's been a hot war for 10 years. There was this period between 2015 and 2022 when, from the perspective of the West, things weren't really happening. But I can tell you from speaking to soldiers, at the borderline would move kilometers a day, either advancing one way or another, depending on the hot fire from one side to the next. What's happening on a regular basis is what Ukraine would want in terms of a ceasefire to begin negotiations, which is cessation of these ballistic missiles and drone attacks against Ukrainian civilian areas. Ukraine has obviously developed its own very powerful drone attacks against Russia, but those have been targeted against military facilities. What we want to stop are the children's hospitals, the maternity wards, the nuclear power plants, all things that have been hit by Russia with their ballistic missiles.
Andrij, I have less than a minute, but can you tell me what success would look like today with this phone call?
I think success would look like if the United States were to stand by its ally and say, listen, this is what we demand. And if Putin doesn't give in to those demands, like Ukraine did, Ukraine said originally that they wanted to do a sea and air ceasefire, but the Trump administration insisted it has to be a total ceasefire. That's what Ukraine agreed to. It seems as if Russia doesn't do the same thing and agree totally to the demands of the Trump administration, there should be some kind of punishment, much like Ukraine was deprived of military intelligence and military supplies. Sanctions should be ratcheted up ASAP.
Andrij Dobriansky, once again, thank you so much for joining us this morning on a very difficult situation that we're all watching to see how it develops. Andrij, thank you.
Thank you.